Version 5.7 was simply crazy. We got a lot of info about the whole story and how it really came to be, but as you can tell by the title, we're back with another paradox. Not gonna lie, I do like paradoxes, but they're really hard to explain. In this video, we will only talk about A Space and Time for You, while my next video will be all about Skirk's story quest. We have a lot to talk about, so it's better to start the video right away, but first, this is a theory video and leaks are prohibited in the comment section. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update to the game itself. In this video, since this is how I play the game, I will refer to the Traveler as Aether and to the Abyss sibling as Lumine, so I hope you'll understand this is simply a way to make things easier to understand. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to those who play as Lumine. Well then, grab your atlas and let's get this video started. Let's start with a quick recap of the quest. When we helped Ian's son patrolling the Collective of Plenty area, we found a scared Hillacher in a cave that didn't exist before 5.7, but also one of the keys to the hibernation chambers of the spaceship the twins used to get to Teyvat. And since Aether still had his own, Paimon thought Lumine had lost hers. Soon after, the Abyss Order attacked Natlan, so we went to help the Masters of the Nightwind, only to realize the Abyss Order's offensive was uncharacteristically weak. We went back to the cave to look for more clues, since Lumine is the leader of the Abyss Order, but we found a Khaenri'ah girl, Deirdre, running for her life from invisible monsters that Aether was only able to see by touching her hand. Deirdre then told Aether that he looked identical to the savior she grew up hearing about, the person who would have saved their homeland from an impending prophesied doomsday, except for the fact that this savior was supposed to be a woman. Deirdre decided to keep looking for this savior, so we went back to the Masters of the Nightwind where we met Dainsleif, and we went with him to Ochkanatlan, the Abyss Order's headquarters, to put an end to the invasion. There we found the leader of the attack, an iniquitous Baptist, who told us that the attack was just a distraction to allow Lumine to infiltrate the Night Kingdom to use the Loom of Fate and recreate Khaenri'ah's ley lines. Aether left Dainsleif to speak with Deirdre again, since she was probably from New Khaenri'ah, and the iniquitous Baptist revealed himself to be Hayden, Dainsleif and Surtology's master who, back in Khaenri'ah, tried to boost his own status and reputation by breaking the new generations of knights with unwarranted corporal punishments that even cost Surtology an arm and a leg. Hayden's objective, though, wasn't to defeat Dainsleif. The members of the Abyss Order had been providing the Loom of Fate with their memories of Khaenri'ah, but because of the erosion caused by the curse, they were not enough. Dainsleif instead wears a ring his brother, Vedrfornir, gave him, which constantly reconstructs his body, making him the sole person with the most complete memories of Khaenri'ah. Hayden tricked him into thinking about Khaenri'ah of the past, and the Loom of Fate managed to tap into his mind, acquiring those memories, hence finally completing its work. In the meantime, Aether found Deirdre shocked, and when they held hands, Aether could see that she was witnessing the cataclysm. Deirdre asked Aether to give her something she could use to convince her sister, the savior, that she did indeed meet her brother, and we had the choice whether to give her the key to the hibernation chamber, and after that, Lumine paused New Khaenri'ah and appeared before Aether. Now, Lumine told us that when she was awakened in Teyvat, she had completely lost her memories. She didn't even remember that she had a brother. So she started a new life as the Princess of Khaenri'ah, but as the years passed, she started to remember her past. Most likely after she absorbed the Abyss as King Ermin wanted, she tried to find Aether all over Teyvat, but she never found him, until the day of the Cataclysm, when she was approached by Deirdre, who told her that she had met Aether, showing her the hibernation chamber key as proof. Lumine then had to decide whether to act as the savior she was supposed to be, saving Khaenri'ah from the disaster she caused herself, or to abandon them in order to find Aether and leave Teyvat. Of course, we all know she abandoned Khaenri'ah, she finally found Aether, and they tried to leave, but Sasti stopped them. Then Lumine was instantly sent back to Teyvat, and with no way out of the mess she made, she suddenly and conveniently decided to become the savior, but it was too late. The people of Khaenri'ah had already been cursed to live forever until they simply disintegrated into nothingness. In case it wasn't clear, I can't stand Lumine. It's clear that she couldn't care less about Khaenri'ah, and she's now helping them just because she basically has no other option. Anyway, another interesting piece of information we received is that before she abandoned Khaenri'ah, the great abyssal power she absorbed had been divided up, which makes me think that she siphoned the power of the Void Realm and then gave it to Surtalogy, Vedafornir, Rheindaughter, Rerir and Hroptatyr, so Lumine was the one who gave them the world-shattering powers they now wield, and when they didn't use these powers to save Khaenri'ah, they became the sinners, while the one who was supposed to save Khaenri'ah from the beginning is still worshipped as their savior, even despite the fact that she literally abandoned them. Now, why couldn't Lumine find Aether until the Cataclysm? To fully explain what I think, we should first understand the twins' backstory. They were traveling the universe on board of a spaceship inside their own individual hibernation chambers. When the spaceship approached Teyvat, it dropped the two hibernation chambers and the twins ended up in Khaenri'ah, so the summoning ritual Scaramouche talked about was probably a command that was sent to the spaceship to drop the pods. When the Khaenri'ahs found the two pods, they released Lumine, and seeing that she had forgotten all about her past, they jumped at the occasion to use her in order to acquire the power of the Abyss. The problem was that if she saw Aether, she could have remembered about her past and he could have convinced her to leave Teyvat, so they most likely hid his pod somewhere safe in Khaenri'ah. Once Lumine acquired the Abyss, she started remembering about her past. She probably went to check where her own hibernation chamber was, but Aether's pod wasn't there, so she left Khaenri'ah to look for him, and she still couldn't find him. When she came back, the Cataclysm had just started. Death approached her, she showed her the key, and suddenly Lumine was able to find Aether's pod pretty quickly. Now, the apparently obvious explanation is that the key Death had somehow led her to Aether's pod, but this is wrong for two reasons. First, Death never gave Lumine the key, she kept it for 500 years, because that Hillacher we saw at the beginning of the quest was indeed Death. Second, we had the option not to give Death the key, and as a consequence Lumine threw her own key at her feet, in order not to change fate. So if a key can pinpoint its respective pod's location, in this case it would have marked Lumine's pod, not Aether's. How did she find Aether then? The easiest solution is that since Khaenri'ah was crumbling down because of the Cataclysm, the room where Aether's pod had been hidden crumbled as well, so she simply saw him and woke him up. If I'm right, then what I cannot understand is her reason to help Khaenri'ah when she was sent back to Teyvat. If she found out that they intentionally hid Aether from her to use her amnesia for their own interests, it would make little sense for her to want to help them, unless she's faking it and her real goal is to take revenge on King Ermin, something she can only achieve if Khaenri'ah is brought back, but this is speculation, so I'll stop. It's time to explain the complicated stuff, the free keys and the time paradox. Essentially, New Khaenri'ah is a perfect reconstruction of real Khaenri'ah and its ley lines from 500 years ago, the Lumine superimposed on present-day Natlan, so two realities from different times and spaces existing in two different but parallel dimensions. Then Istaroth used New Khaenri'ah as a bridge to connect the present and the past, so when Aether grabbed Death's hand and saw the Cataclysm, these two dimensions, the past and the present, suddenly converged as one, and Aether was sent to the past since he disappeared from Natlan. In that moment, there were 4 people who changed history. Death, of course, past Aether, sleeping in the pod with his own key, key A, past Lumine, who was about to arrive there with her own key in her bag, key B, and present Aether, who ended up there because of Istaroth, and he also had his own key on him, which is still key A but from the future. This is why in that moment there were 3 keys instead of just 2. 2 keys existed in the past and 1 key was brought from the future. Now, Dirdeth asked Aether to give her something to use as proof in case she met the real savior, and we had to decide whether to give her the key we had, and the moment we made a choice, Lumine paused New Khaenri'ah, probably because her past self was about to arrive. She can't meet herself, otherwise she would have literally broken reality. One of them would have disappeared because the past and present versions of herself can't exist in the same space-time. And this is also what happened to the 2 keys present Aether should have had on him, so his own and the one he found in the cave. I'll explain this twice because we had 2 options. If we gave Dirdeth the key, it means that the key we found in the cave has always been Aether's key, so the 2 keys converged as one just like the 2 realities did. The key we found in the cave basically vanished, and since we gave her our key, when the quest ended, it also disappeared from our inventory. If instead we decided not to give Dirdeth the key, Lumine will throw her own key at Dirdeth's feet so that Dirdeth would still have a key to show past Lumine as proof. In this case, the key we found in the cave was actually Lumine's, and it merged with present Lumine's key when she appeared. The key from the cave still vanished and Aether still ended up having just 1 key on him. As a consequence, present Lumine doesn't have her key anymore because 500 years ago Dirdeth only showed her the key, otherwise we wouldn't have found it in the cave, and after the quest we get to keep the key in our inventory. Now, apart from the 3 keys, we still need to talk about the actual time paradox, which isn't that hard to understand since it's not really something new, but it's very hard to explain, so I'll try my best. So if we remove time travel, we can kinda figure out what natural timeline, timeline A, could have been. Lumine never heard of Aether being somewhere near her because Dirdeth never met him, so she would have fought for Khaenri'ah against the Heavenly Principles. She could have died fighting, she could have won, or she could have lost. She could have also found Aether, but only after she fought to save Khaenri'ah, and whether she won or not, they could have decided to stay in Khaenri'ah as prince and princess. Basically, everything we witnessed since the beginning of the game couldn't have happened at all. Of course, in this quest there is time travel, so things are very different. Imagine you found a way to go back to 2015 and give yourself the winning numbers for the lottery. When you got back to 2025, your life would have changed accordingly, so timeline A, in which you never won, simply got substituted by timeline B, in which you are rich. This is simple time travel that doesn't cause any kind of paradox because the timeline was changed because of something that existed naturally in timeline A, the winning numbers for the lottery. What happened in version 5.7 is instead a massive paradox that doesn't make sense on multiple levels, and by that I mean that it's something that simply cannot happen. Either the traveler we've been playing as since the beginning of the game doesn't belong to timeline A to begin with. He's always existed in timeline B, a timeline that literally has no reason to exist, but also a timeline that apparently created itself out of nowhere. Everything we've witnessed, from Sasti stopping the twins to us finding Dirdeth, is the result of Dirdeth showing Lumine the key to the hibernation chamber, something that could have only happened because Aether had been separated from Lumine while trying to leave Tevat. Timeline B, in this case, was created by a choice that was made at the end of Timeline B itself. In easier terms, imagine you find a big diamond on the ground in 2025 and then you are forcibly sent back to 2015, where you meet a girl you've never met in your entire life, you give her that diamond, and 10 years later, in 2025, the diamond falls out of her pocket, and not long after you find it on the ground only to be sent back to 2015 again, when you'll meet that girl you still never met in your life, and things repeat themselves. That diamond has no reason to exist, it shouldn't exist at all, but it's still the reason why you had the diamond to give that girl, and because of that it always becomes the reason you find it 10 years after. This is a paradox, because the reason why it happened cannot be explained, and because it also causes a never-ending loop. You find the diamond in 2025, you go back to 2015 and give it to an unknown girl in the past, you go back to 2025 and you keep living. The version of you that was in 2015 lives for 10 years and becomes the new present you. He finds the diamond, goes back to 2015, gives it to the same unknown girl, because this version of you never met her. He goes back to 2025 and keeps living, so another version of you who was living in 2015 finds a diamond in 2025, and that goes on forever, but this loop doesn't have a beginning. Same goes for Genshin Impact. Present Aether finds the key, goes back to the past, gives it to Dirdith, Aether goes back to present time and keeps living. Dirdith shows Cataclysm Lumine the key but keeps it, so the Cataclysm Aether, after being caught by Sasti and then released, finds the key in the present and is sent back to the past, and the loop begins anew. As I said before, this isn't really something new, it's quite literally what happened in the Shogun's second story quest. A was sent 500 years in the past, where she planted a seed that grew into the sacred sakura tree, becoming the only reason why Inazuma hadn't been completely destroyed by the cataclysm. The problem is still the same. In the natural timeline, Timeline A, Inazuma had been completely destroyed by the abyss, and yet A lived for 500 years in a completely fine Inazuma that survived the abyss, despite the fact that the reason why it was saved was a decision taken in Timeline B directly, a timeline that has no reason to exist. Now, while I hope I managed to explain this in the easiest possible way, the solution to these two paradoxes is extremely easy. Istaroth. We've always believed that, being the Shade of Time, she could simply rule over time, so moving it forward or backwards. After this quest instead, it seems that her true power actually allows her to create new timelines out of nowhere. She can arbitrarily write a new story, a new timeline, that doesn't have to make sense from the beginning, and people end up living in this new timeline just because she decided so, and it becomes a real timeline. It substitutes the natural events when it reaches its end, the same end that causes its beginning. The story we've experienced so far wasn't real history, it was something like a simulation that suddenly became reality when Aether or Lumine gave Dirdith that key, setting things in motion for the first time. If this sounds vaguely familiar, it's because this is more or less what Lumine is trying to do with the Loom of Fate. She perfectly recreated Khaenri'ah from 500 years ago up until the cataclysm happened, in order to give it a future that in this timeline doesn't exist. And when she'll find a place or a vessel to release this world, Khaenri'ah's timeline will suddenly change from Timeline B, in which it was destroyed, to Timeline C, in which it survived and moved on. Now, if you've watched my latest videos on the Primordial One, the Heavenly Principles and the Shades, you know I believe the Shades are secretly rebelling against the Heavenly Principles, using the twins without them realizing it. Istaroth, the Shade of Time, made sure that the twins were caught by Sasti, the Shade of Void, who sent Lumine back to Khaenri'ah to deal with the curse Renova, the Shade of Death, placed on the people, so that Lumine would have kept using the power of the Abyss to fight the Heavenly Principles out of regret for not having saved the nation. Then, 500 years later, Aether was sent back to Teyvat as well and was quote-unquote guided to gather the elements of the human realm, which led him to befriend and help the Archons, a path that will inevitably lead him to the Tsaritsa, the one Archon who also despises the Heavenly Principles, who will most likely convince him that they are evil. In the end, Lumine and Aether's fates will converge when they'll face the Heavenly Principles as their equals, with the weight of a world behind them, Khaenri'ah for Lumine and Teyvat for Aether. And hopefully, at least from the point of view of the Shades, they will use the two opposite powers they'll have acquired to finally defeat the Heavenly Principles. To conclude the video, since the Shades do love a good paradox it seems, do you realize that there is yet another one we still haven't figured out? Lumine is originally not from Teyvat, but she suddenly became from Teyvat, while Aether, her twin brother, is still not from Teyvat. Considering that we've talked about Sasti, Istaroth and Renova, could it be that this is Naberius' fault? When Lumine arrived in Khaenri'ah, she had lost all her memories, which reminds me of Neuvillette, the reincarnation of the original water dragon, who could only fully remember his predecessor's memories when he received the water authority and became complete. What if, and this is a huge if, Lumine didn't survive the landing and Naberius, the Shade of Life, brought her back to life in Teyvat? She would automatically become from Teyvat, and she got her full memories back only after she absorbed the Abyss, which is probably how she got her original powers back, since her accessories glow white like Aether's before Sasti sealed his powers. So I'll end this video with the most wicked question ever. Is this Lumine really the sister Aether has been looking for? And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact theory videos, consider subscribing. As I said before, my next video will be about Skirk's story quest, which is by no means easier than this one, so I'll start working on the script right away, especially because I already have some theories I want to explore. Well then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.